Imagine standing waist-deep in the ocean on a warm afternoon. Clear water, 40 million tourists doing the same thing every summer. Now imagine that directly beneath your feet, starting at 590 feet down, not in some distant trench. The water contains hydrogen sulfide at concentrations that would kill you in under a minute. That 90% of this sea's entire volume is chemically incompatible with any animal with a nervous system. That the bottom hasn't been touched by oxygen in 7,000 years. That ancient Greek ships are sitting on that floor right now, masts still standing, cargo still stacked, preserved by the same chemistry that makes the deep water lethal. That something in the boundary between the poison and the breathable is generating light signals no one has been able to identify. This is the Black Sea. 3,000 years of continuous civilization on its shores. 90% of its volume never sampled. Its floor survey less than 1% complete. We start at the surface. We work our way down. The further down we go, the stranger it gets. 7,500 years ago, someone walked across the ground where the Black Sea now sits. They farmed there. The Bosphorus was dry land under their feet. Then the ridge failed. When the Mediterranean broke through, water poured in at 200 times the flow of Niagara Falls. Every day. The lake level rose 6 inches per day. The shoreline advanced a mile per day. If you were living there, you'd wake up to water slightly higher than yesterday. Within a week, advancing faster than you could walk. Within a month, everything underwater. In 2000, Robert Ballard, the man who found the Titanic, sent a vehicle to the Black Sea floor at 311 feet and found a carved wooden beam, a worked stone, a human structure preserved exactly as it was the day its owners ran. The site has never been excavated. The floor almost certainly holds dozens more, entire villages in the dark where their inhabitants left them. The flood changed the physics of the water in a way that has been running for 7,500 years. If archaeologists found a preserved 7,500-year-old village on dry land, it would be the discovery of the century. So why do you think the same discovery underwater gets almost no attention? Leave your answer in the comments. The salt water that poured in was denser than the fresh water already there. It sank and stayed. The two layers never mixed. The Bosphorus is so narrow it takes 2,500 years to cycle the entire volume of the sea. Think of oil and water in a sealed jar, touching, permanently refusing to become one thing. The boundary is called the chemocline. It sits at 590 feet. Above it, oxygen, fish, everything you'd expect. Below it, a world without oxygen for so long that the rules of life as we understand them don't apply. Below the chemocline, bacteria process sulfur compounds. Their byproduct, accumulated for 7,500 years, is hydrogen sulfide. At 50 parts per million, it causes unconsciousness within seconds. The deep Black Sea holds it at concentrations orders of magnitude above that threshold. The deep Black Sea is the largest natural reservoir of hydrogen sulfide on the surface of the Earth. 90% of the sea's total volume. If the chemocline failed, the hydrogen sulfide released would be detectable from Turkey to Poland. The mechanism is debated. The possibility is not. The chemocline has held for 7,500 years. But the sea below it has been accumulating pressure, gas, and unexplained chemistry ever since. Consider what that oxygen-free environment does to everything that sinks through the chemocline. In 2017, a survey of the deep floor found over 60 ancient shipwrecks in extraordinary condition. A Greek vessel from 400 BC lay with its mast still standing, tool marks of the craftsman still visible in the wood. An Ottoman ship from the 17th century sat upright with amphorae stacked in the hold, as though the crew had anchored and simply never returned. The survey covered less than 1% of the floor. If the density holds, preserved vessels run into the thousands. Greek traders, Roman grain carriers, Byzantine warships. all in perfect condition, in the dark. The sea that drowned a civilization 7,500 years ago has been quietly archiving everything that has sailed across it ever since. The people who survived ran in every direction. Their entire known world went underwater within a single lifetime. They carried the memory with them. Geologists Ryan and Pittman propose that this flood is the origin of flood narratives appearing independently across cultures with no documented contact: Sumerian, Hebrew, Greek, Hindu, Norse. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest known work of literature, written 4,000 years ago, contains a flood story structurally identical to Noah's. The physical event is not in dispute: the ancient shoreline 300 feet below the current surface, the sediment record, the chemical signature of the intrusion, all documented with geological precision. Whether a story traveled with the people who ran is a question sediment cores cannot answer. But it was the right flood, in the right place, at the right time. If that kind of question is what brought you here, there is more coming. What we haven't covered yet: what the poison layer does to the surface above it, on certain nights, in certain storms. The poison layer does not always stay below 590 feet. Under certain conditions, it surfaces, and when it does, it announces itself. In the early 20th century, fishermen on the Romanian and Bulgarian coast reported that the sea, during storms, caught fire. Not a boat, not spilled oil. The water surface itself, a visible pale flame. The scientific establishment dismissed them for decades. During major storms, turbulent wave action forces, hydrogen sulfide saturated deep water upward. When it contacts the air and encounters lightning, it briefly combusts, a pale blue flame on the water for seconds. It took until the 1970s for chemical analysis to confirm this was possible. The fishermen had been right for 50 years. The sea had been demonstrating its own interior the whole time. The same cold efficiency applies to everything that has ever sunk here. During World War II, the Black Sea was a continuous theater of combat from 1941 to 1944. A campaign that rarely appears in American accounts of the war, which tend to focus on the Pacific and Normandy, but which was intense and strategically significant throughout. The Soviet, German, Romanian, and Bulgarian navies all operated simultaneously in a body of water the size of California. Submarines hunted convoys. Hospital ships were sunk. Most of those wrecks sit in or near the Anoxic zone. The chemistry that preserves a 2,400-year-old Greek ship also preserves a World War II destroyer. Hull, machinery, cargo. Some are war graves. Others carried munitions corroding inside hulls the sea is simultaneously keeping intact. The floor holds the military history of empires and world wars alongside the merchant history of antiquity, neither fully accounted for. Go deeper, past the wrecks, past the chemocline, into the zone that by every prior understanding of biology should contain nothing more complex than a bacterium. In 2010, a team from the University of Copenhagen found multicellular animals in sediment cores from the deep floor, fully within the Anoxic zone, where hydrogen sulfide is lethal to every complex organism previously studied. Not bacteria, animals. They had no mitochondria, the organelles that process oxygen in every complex animal on Earth. Instead, hydrogenosomes, a completely different energy system previously known only in single-celled organisms. Evolution, in the enclosed darkness of the deep Black Sea, built an animal around a different engine. Running in complete isolation since the chemocline formed 7,500 years ago, in a sea that shares a coastline with beach resorts and tourists who have no idea what is living 600 feet below their boats. And while that world developed in the dark, something quieter has been happening at the surface, visible from shore, receiving almost no attention from the countries it is slowly erasing. The Black Sea is eating its own coast. In some sections of the Bulgarian and Romanian shoreline, erosion exceeds 3 feet per year. Beaches stable in the 1950s are gone. Archaeological sites are falling into the water before anyone can excavate them, joining everything else the sea keeps. The cause: the Danube River, which maintained this coastline for millennia, now loses 70% of its sediment load to a dam built in the 1960s. The engineering solutions are understood. The coordination has not happened. The floor accumulates what sinks. The surface gives back what the sea takes. Both run simultaneously, in opposite directions, and neither waits. Now go below the floor itself. The seabed vents methane. In some locations, the bubble columns are visible from a research vessel. Over 7,000 seep sites documented. Where this gas meets the pressure and cold of the deep, it forms methane hydrates, solid, ice-like compounds stable only within a narrow temperature range. Deposits estimated at the scale of a mid-sized country's natural gas reserves. Those hydrates are stable as long as the temperature stays below a threshold. The deep Black Sea is warming, slowly, measurably, consistently. Methane is 25 times more potent than CO2. Nobody has published a timeline for when the warming reaches the stability threshold. The data exists. The calculation has not been made public. Which brings us finally to the boundary between the two worlds, and to what was found living inside it 2 years ago. The chemocline is not a simple line. It is a transition zone, a few dozen feet thick. Above it, light, oxygen, fish, tourists. Below it, darkness, poison, ancient preserved things, animals with no mitochondria. In the chemocline itself, something science has not yet named. In 2023, researchers from the Bulgarian Academy of Sciences recorded bioluminescent signals from within the chemocline. Not from above it, where such organisms are expected, but from inside the boundary where conditions should be hostile to everything that makes light. Periodic, structured, significantly brighter than background. Recorded at locations hundreds of miles apart. Not a local anomaly, but a feature of the chemocline at the scale of the entire sea. The spectral signature matches no catalogued species. The researchers proposed organisms living specifically in the transition zone, in neither world fully, but in the interface between them. Species never detected, because the technology to work within the chemocline didn't previously exist. No follow-up sampling has been conducted. The paper's conclusion: further investigation is required. Something is living in the boundary between the poison and the breathable. Making light on a schedule we don't understand, across 168,500 square miles. It has been doing this since the chemocline formed, since the flood, since the salt water came through the Bosphorus and sank to the bottom and separated the two worlds. We just didn't have instruments sensitive enough to see it until 2023. The Black Sea has been the center of human civilization for 3,000 years. Every generation that came to its shores looked at the surface and believed that was most of the story. It wasn't. The sea was here before the Greeks named it, before Rome mapped it, before the Ottomans called it theirs. It was here when the ridge failed and the people on the freshwater shore picked up their children and ran, and it will be here long after the instruments we haven't built yet finally go the rest of the way down. The surface looks the same as it did to all of them, entirely indifferent to how much we still don't know. The next video covers a body of water that should be simple by comparison, entirely landlocked, no coastline, and the civilizations that built their lives around it left no written records. What they left instead is considerably stranger. That is next. We will see you there.